right. Greetings, and welcome again to Refuge Depot, where we're talking about current events today that deal with disaster preparedness and survival. Of course, the current events are always something of interest because they let us know what time we're in. And so the time that we can definitely look at is a time where we need to be preparedness minded. We need to begin to stock up our homes with non perishable food and water. We need to have a to go bag just in case we need to evacuate. We need to have things in place where if we need to shelter in place, that our homes will be a sanctuary and won't be a tomb. So, with that, I want to go ahead and introduce our co-host. But before I do that, I always want to ask you to subscribe and follow. That helps, of course, for us to produce more programs. Please like and share with family, with friends, with associates, with everybody on your social media platforms. All right. So, with that, let me go ahead and introduce our co host, and I'll start with Brother Sanford Whitlow. Let's go ahead and bring my brother on. Greetings, brother.
Hey, brother, how you doing this evening?
I am doing well, doing well. A little exhausted. It's been a very extraneous day. You know, that snow can take a lot out of you, and what made it so extraneous was because I had to dig out. I got a little stuck for a minute there earlier today, but we were able to get it going. So let me, but and that once again, that is why we talk about disaster preparedness and being prepared, and having certain things in your vehicle. And one of the things, fortunately, was a small little shovel that we could, dig, up under the tires and get them to where they got some traction. So just letting people know, be prepared today because the weather is so extreme. We have fire on one side, ice on another side, hurricanes down below. So, and of course, the winter coming from above. So let's go ahead and bring on Brother Aaron Olinger. Let's bring him on. Greetings, brother. How you doing today?
Good, Steve. How you doing?
I am doing blessed, doing blessed. So, today we're going to talk about some current events. I'm going to go off screen and allow you two brothers to handle the show, but I'm going to be off screen handling the graphics. So, feel free. I'll come on every now and then just to interject maybe a few words, but you brothers go right ahead.
Okay,
All right.
Sanford. Let's start off talking about the California wildfires, if that's okay with you.
Yes, sir. I think that's
Okay.
fine.
All right. Basically, you had five different fires that were going on. One was in the Hearst area. One was Lydia, Eaton, Sunset, and Palisades. Those were five fires. They've been burning a number of days. Um, I looked at many videos. I read many articles on the possible source of the fires, and some people say it was DEW, which stands for direct energy weapons. Other people were saying it was smart meters because about a year or so ago, smart meters were exploding and was causing fires. They were seeing People were seeing drones in the area before some of the fires started. Some feel it was lone wolf attacks, which we can get into that a little bit later. And then I saw a few videos where people showed overloaded power lines that I guess were power surging and they just started exploding into flames. Did you want to address any of those, Sanford, or you want me to keep going?
Well, funny, one of the things I talked to you about earlier, I saw a individual on the Sean Ryan show, a young lady. recognized Jane Doe, who's a operative. And one of the things he asked at the end of the show if they had any intelligence stating about the fires being started from quote unquote maybe a terrorist activity. And she said none of the intel has led toward that, but they do believe it's possible to have some small group localized terrorists that may have been involved in spreading the fires after they initially started. So I just looked at that and kind of researched that earlier today and found that out. So she said from their standpoint, they don't believe it was a terrorist act, but they do believe that after the fire started, there were probably some small groups, organizations who helped perpetuate the fire.
Right.
But it had not been confirmed. You can go ahead.
Okay. Then let's get into reason. Why would said fires be? I mean, of course, you could say Mother Nature. I was amazed to see a brochure today that clearly stated Smart LA 2028 and how they were going to be building for the coming Olympics when they rebuild LA. I mean, you're still trying to put all the fires out, and you already came out with a brochure talking about building LA as a smart city for 2028. So one of the reasons is they could be trying to create smart cities. Uh, Better development means higher taxes. I mean, if these homes are expensive homes, you're going to bring in more revenue for the city. The only sad part is the people that originally lived there won't be able to probably buy into the new developments. Then you've got the high-speed rail system, which we can see right up there on the board right now. And you can see that Sunset has a line. And if we had a map that overlaid the areas that have burnt, you'd be surprised at how much of that train system is running through the areas that were mostly burnt. And then it's amazing to me that some of the insurance companies were able to cancel some of the policies just ahead of the fires. And I don't think that's right. I mean, in Florida and other places where after disasters, some of the stores or places that price gouge was called out by the federal government and was taken to court for price gouging during a disaster. I don't believe if they can charge someone with price gouging during a disaster, they should be able to do something about these insurance companies that saw the fires coming and then started canceling people. To me, that's just totally wrong. I mean, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I tell you something. I don't know if I mentioned this to you. Something that happened to me this week that had never happened before. I have State Farm as an insurance provider, right? And State Farm has called me 4 days in the last week and a half. They haven't left a message yet, but they called me 4 days in the last week and a half. This is my local agent, I'm assuming. So now my thought is, are they trying to prepare me that they're going to raise my rates because of what's going on? It's almost like a precursor, like a setup move to let me know ahead of time, look, something's about to change in your life. And I've had State Farm for 30 years at least, more than that. And it's the first time I've received a open call from them, unless they was trying to sell me something. It's the first time I've received calls from them and they have not left a message. So I think it's a whole lot to what you're saying. Another thing I found out, and I don't know if you heard about this, the state of California just approved a $50 million budget. That's an anti-president Trump administration budget.
I just
So
heard
now,
about that today.
right, you got a state burning in flames, and you approved $50 million to fight administrative office that's coming into office, not even there yet. And you mean to tell me you take $50 million and set aside for that, and you got people who are now homeless, people who have been homeless, people who are starving, who have been starving. I don't want to say I've never been like a conspiracy theorist guy, but come on, man. Something's really going on. I think a lot of people don't even know that. And I found out about that $50 million budget thing about a week ago. And I mentioned it to 4 or 5, 6 people. And I had people tell me, oh no, man, that can't be true. And when they looked it up, I had 2 guys call me and said, man, I can't believe this. And I said, yeah, so much more happening that's really underneath the surface, that's in plain sight that we're not seeing. Maybe because we don't want to see it. Maybe because we I don't understand the reason why we doing this to ourselves. But okay, yeah, there we go. Right. $50 million that you put aside to fight a political party or political person who's not even in office yet, and your state is burning to the ground. And you got a state of emergency where you don't have enough fire equipment. As I said last time, I found out that the state of California voluntarily sent last year 500,000 pieces of fire equipment to Ukraine. Hear what I said? That's 500,000 pieces of fire equipment. So that can be from masks, that can be from uniforms, that can be something as simple as a axe, and you send it to Ukraine. And now other states, especially Texas, is providing the stuff you need to try to maintain this. No, man, I don't know how much you've heard about that, but this is, I mean, there's some soul searching and some truth need to be told.
Oh, I agree 100%. I mean, why did it spread so quickly? The 50 to 100-mile-an-hour winds had a lot to do with it. And I'm sure the weather people saw that coming. Now, in politics, there's an old saying that you don't let no good disaster go to waste. I mean, this might have started out being an act of Mother Nature, but so many other things took place that it makes a person begin to ask, is there an end game that they were going for on this to move that population out of the areas that they did? I mean, some of the people who died, I saw videos where people said that they didn't leave because they're so used to seeing this happen over and over multiple times a year that they didn't think that they would need to leave. So they waited to the last minute. And then they found that the streets were blocked with cars and they had to abandon their cars and run on foot. So a lot of the deaths that was caused from flames and smoke due to the fact that the people waited too long to try to evacuate their properties.
Right.
They said the fire hydrants ran empty. Well, I looked into that and I found an interesting fact, and that is the water towers. One, because of the amount of fires they have, they're supposed to have more water towers than what they got, but because they're such eyesores, being close to people's expensive properties, nobody wanted them. So the ones that they had available, the higher up in the sky the tower sits, the more pressure that gravity creates on the water. That's what gives the water hydrants and the water lines its water pressures. That water sitting so high up off the ground, forcing downward. Now, when a house or a building burns, now we've talked on this show about learning where your main cutoffs are in the house. Your main water shut off. If you have a gas line in your house, the main shut off to be able to turn off. And if there's not, then know where your circuit breaker box is if it's electric, so that you can shut your breakers off. Because when the power goes off and it comes back on, there's usually a power surge. And if your appliances are not attached to surge strips, that overpowering could create a fire in your house. Just the overpressuring of gas lines coming back or being in action to create a situation. When a house or a building caves in on itself, it breaks the water lines. Now, when those lines get broke, they're running nonstop. And they said that they had over 40,000 buildings that burnt. If 40,000 buildings implode on themselves, that's 40,000 water sources turned on full force running nonstop. I mean, you can empty a water tower out in less than a day. And then when you go to the fire hydrants to try to get water pressure, you got none because your water towers are empty, or they have so little pressure, there's not enough to run the fire hoses. So I did not realize, but a lot of those people, when they abandoned their homes, they did not turn off the main shutoff. They just left. And when those houses caved in and those buildings caved in, that water ran nonstop until everything was depleted. Then there's the fact that the governor signed a bill because the Indians wanted their children to see salmon be reintroduced into the reservoirs. So they tore the dams down. So there was no water to go get there because those things have been reduced to mere rivers right now for the sake of bringing the salmon back for the children to see. And then going to what you said about the lone wolf attacks, 2 people been arrested so far. And one was actually wearing a fireman's uniform.
Yeah.
Now, there are criminals that are, I mean, the looting's off the chain. You've got some gangs are just moving in and looting and doing stuff, but then you got criminals of opportunity that saw this and saw an opportunity. Oh, let's go over to the costume rental place and let's practice gray man technique. Let's rent some police uniforms. Let's rent some fireman uniforms. Let's rent some paramedic uniforms. That way, by the way we're dressed, we look like we belong here and nobody's going to question us entering a home. So one of the guys that was setting the fires, he was actually wearing a fireman's uniform. So that really trips me out right there. Then another thing that I'm disturbed with is the number of firefighters they said that they had. They had 40 helicopters. They had fixed wing aircraft that they leased from Canada, from Quebec, the super scoopers that partially land on the water, scoop up the water, and then come in. And at first I heard there's 15,000, then it went down to 5,000. Now it's at 4,000, but the fires are still burning. Why didn't we have 100,000? I mean, you could have got prisoners out of prison to help with that. You could have got civilians that would have been willing to fight the fire to save their own homes. All you would have needed was to have someone come in and organize them with skilled firemen and turn them loose. I mean, why didn't we have 100,000 out there? You know, I mean, you telling me all you can come up with 15,000 people of a population of LA that's up in the millions? Well, and then you got local states. I mean, go ahead, Sanford.
I was going to say, I do know that they use some prison inmates to help try to deter the fire. I saw a little small reading. I don't know what the number was. It could be completely exaggerated. How many of them went rogue though after they got out to after they got out to help? I mean, I don't know if it's a lose-lose. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's a lose-lose because of the mindset of the people. When you talked about the people they found dressed as firefighters, I saw where there were some people dressed as firefighters, and then they had some that they don't know where they got like the yellow vest from, like they're working in the streets, and those people were looting the houses. Now the houses are burnt down. You got people in there looking for safes in the houses that are burnt down because the area is in. So I don't know. I mean, this is poor management, man. This is poor management of the community, poor management of people's well-being, poor management of just lives in general, man. And I don't know how if they get through this, I mean, they'll get through, but if they get through this in a way that they can save anything, I don't know how this, and I don't want to get political at all. I'm going to say this one time. I don't know how the people in charge stay in charge. Now, I don't know if I sent this to you earlier this week, but 5 days ago, the police chief who was all on board with the mayor and the governor, she is now backpedaled, and she started talking about how she complained several months ago about how the budget cuts were hurting the department. And I brought up how, like I said, 500,000 pieces of equipment have been moved out. And it's the first time she complained about it. But she actually 5 days ago, she complained about it and said that she was, she was left with no help, no resources or anything. And the speech was almost like I was doing or saying what I had to say because I was in the spotlight to say it, or I was in a position to do it, to have to act like I was wanting to comply or agree. And now her whole line of response is totally different. She's talking like, like she can't believe they did this to her. She can't believe what they done to the community. Um, how come we don't have enough firefighters? It's interesting now, how the tables are turned, but that's not going to change all the damage and all the things that you can't get back for people who lost things. And so,
Right.
a lot of people are talking about the big homes, but man, think about the people, the everyday people, man, who lost everything, who don't have the big homes, who don't have another resource to go to, man. And I'm gonna go back to that $50 million, worried about a political figure. When you got people who don't have nothing and you put them out there, I mean, I don't know, man. I do know, but I don't know. Yeah,
Well, I'm gonna say this. I did see where the fire chief, uh, and she definitely said that uh, she was left out there hanging. I did see where the mayor of the city was actually overseas in Africa attending a swearing in ceremony for
yeah,
an African president, and she didn't seem to care to come back to manage her own city, which that amazed the hell out of me. And when she came back and reporters got around her, she didn't have one word to say. Henry Winkler, the Fonz, his house burned down. He said that it was on purpose. Mel Gibson, whose house burnt down, uh, they've got a big arson theory there. And then Elon Musk, which I don't think he has a property there, he said it's a big land grab. So here's people of prominence that are saying that there's some sort of conspiracy going on to get rid of everybody and move everybody for this development plan for Smart LA 2028. And that just amazes me to no end.
Well, I'll say this now. I'll end with this. You reap what you sow.
Well, I
So
agree. And go ahead.
if these things have been pre-planned like that, and the stuff Mel Gibson is talking about, and the Fonz is talking about, and the other people that are saying, I mean, you'll reap what you sow. You will reap what you
And
sow.
then I'm gonna explain something else too, because when they said they ran out of water, a lot of people said, "Well, what about the ocean there? You got plenty of water." Now I looked into that and I found out that salt water on the pumper trucks, if they pump the salt water into the truck, take it to the fire, it's very corrosive on their equipment. However, one fireman said, given a choice between no water and salt water, then salt water is what they're going to use. Then there were people that was arguing the issue that if you put salt water on land, you're salting the earth, and now the plant life is all going to die and you're creating a bigger desert. But
Right.
like when Troy was invaded, and after they took the walls down, they salted the earth to make it where people couldn't live there no more. Well, you would have to literally flood the land with salt water to create that type of condition. And then that condition would only last uh, 2 to 3 months, and then the plants would slowly start to come back from what I saw. And let's see. Yeah, and I already explained that they tore down the dams to the reservoirs. And to me, I'm wondering where FEMA was. I mean, you got National Guard that could be brought in to fight fires, massive number of National Guard. They were slow on even calling out the guard. And I mean, you're talking about only 40 helicopters. You probably got more than 40 helicopters in the whole state. I mean, you couldn't borrow equipment from other states. And why were you guys so short on stuff? National Guard, I mean, a fire at nighttime, you could see it because of the light it gives off. And during the day, you can see it because of the smoke. It's not something that can sneak up on you. You know it's coming. And these fires burn for a number of days. Why didn't you bring in enough manpower to fight the fire, fight a war with the fire, put it out? They say, well, we got it contained. So now we're down to 4,000 firefighters because the fires are contained. But you let the wind build up again, and you're going to lose containment because you didn't put them out. You sent people home before you totally put them out, which that doesn't make any sense to me. And when you say you got them contained, so you got them in an area that's still burning and you're letting them burn homes and stuff. I mean, they told people to go ahead and abandon the homes and leave the firefighters there to save their homes. Well, they didn't save anything from what I saw. I mean, everything is burned up. I watched videos. And to me, let me say this last statement. To me, there's two things. Well, there's one thing that doesn't take a vacation. It doesn't take a day off. And it's called responsibility. And the government there, the leadership has failed in their responsibility drastically. FEMA has failed. Everyone that's involved in this has failed to save those homes and put those fires out. They waited till they got so damn big before they really started doing anything. And then they didn't call in the assets fast enough, and they didn't bring in enough manpower. People died that didn't have to die. Homes burnt that probably could have been put out if they had had the assets that they needed. So if you failed according to your responsibility, either you're that incompetent or this was all part of the plan. So I'll stop there.
Well, you know, the one thing that's there that they're not making any more of is property. So somebody has that property. And you know, when you mentioned about, I heard the same thing about talking about the corrosion of the equipment. Think about what that does for a human being. For somebody to tell you, well, we don't want to use ocean water because we're gonna corrode millions of dollars worth of equipment. Listen to that. That's a hell of a thing to say. I mean, just to even say, that's a hell of a thing to say. We're worried about some equipment while everything that you work for is going up in smoke. And I'll stop that right there. I know we talked earlier. You mentioned something about North Carolina. What do you have on your mind about North Carolina?
Well, I'm gonna say this: Hurricane Helene in North Carolina destroyed 126,000 homes, 104 confirmed deaths, and we're talking in an area that doesn't flood because we're talking up in the mountains. 60 billion in damages in Western North Carolina. I've kind of affectionately called it the forgotten disaster because nobody is paying attention to those people. And then we're about to get this polar vortex that's coming through. A lot of those people are in tents, in sheds, or they're in little two-person type trailers that FEMA provided. And then you got others in cheap hotels that FEMA gave them this card, and it would pay for daily allowance, which, by the way, expired yesterday, but they decided to extend it out to January 28th. And FEMA just recently approved $213 million for damaged homes, debris removal, and reimbursement of emergency protective measures for the state. Now, the people are wondering, well, when are we going to see any money?
Right.
Because all that money, 213 million, could go toward contractors and people that's removing all that debris and tearing out all that crap. I mean, when are we going to see any money? But on the flip side of that, there's a chip maker out of Massachusetts called Macron Technology Solutions. They're going to pump 345 million into upgrades into the chip plant that they have there that's mining that lithium or whatever that is that's under those homes that they want so bad. That's one of the largest mines in the world for that type of material that they make computer chips out of. 60, let me see, 165 million will be their own money. 70 million will be a grant coming from something called Chips and Science Act, which I didn't know we had such a thing. Then there's another company, and they're called Wolfspeed. They have a company there. They're getting, and this is Biden's administration doing this, they're going to give them $750 million in direct funding. And between the two companies, they're getting $1.095 billion. Now, it's funny that they're going to get their money quicker than the people who need help right now. That's the thing that amazes me. And I just think that's dead wrong that business can get the funding and the people can't. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
Well, I think you're 100% right. I was just looking how the Chips and Science Act. I mean, that's giving $53 billion. I didn't say million. I said B. It's giving $53 billion to everything except the people, and that's approved already. 53 billion going to the efforts of the Chip and Science Act. Well, what's that telling you? The Chip and Science Act is going to be built somewhere on something. Let's go back to a property grab again. Mm-hmm. Everything's flattened. Everything's gone. Hey, here I come in. I got $53 billion. Guess what I can do? I can build a community where I want to put my business at. Where I want to develop my community for my business for the people that I need to be doing this. And it's no excuse for this, man. And you know, it's amazing in this world of modern technology how we can get information instantly, how the things like this are being put in the forefront. And like you said, it's the forgotten disaster. Nobody's talking about this, man. This is current. These people are hurting right now. And this is current. And you don't see it in the news. You don't hear it on any major platform like it's something that happened 100 years ago. And this is in modern day times right here in the United States of America. And there's no excuse for it. And yeah, and like I said, man, I saw where they got $53 billion. And this is from the current administration in office to deal with that. And nothing directly toward those human beings, man. I don't, you know, and you know, certain trigger things I try not to get into. But if people wonder why we're at a point of maybe having some civil unrest, this is why. It's not about who's going in the White House. It's about the people being put out of the house. That's ridiculous, man. That's ridiculous. And people have earned the right to be mad. People have earned the right to be disgruntled. It makes no sense that in modern times that we got people who worked hard, who paid taxes, who made an honest living like they're in a third world country, right here in the quote unquote greatest country in the world. This makes no sense, man. This makes no sense. And I think, and I know, not just I think, I know the reason you don't see it on mainstream media because they don't want you to put the lines together. They don't want you to connect the dots. They don't want that to happen. Because if people connect the dots, they become aware. So if it's out of sight, it's out of mind. So the fact that we're even talking about this and Brother Steve is showing these graphics, see, unless people are looking at this, people don't believe this is happening right now. They think, oh man, this is something that happened a long time ago. No, this is today. This is today. So I'm not shocked that we are the greatest, the highest point possibly being the civil unrest. And it goes back to what we always talk about. Be ready so you don't have to get ready. So some things you may not be able to prepare for completely. And it may be because of finance, it may be because of just where you are in particular. But I mean, if these little things, just the two things we brought up so far, the fires and the situation in North Kakalaki here, without the support of the government, if this doesn't show you that you need to take some personal responsibility and really start thinking about what little things I can do to prepare me some kind of way, even if and even if you have the mindset if a disaster happens here or something happens, can I put myself in a position to relocate where this is not happening? I'm talking about we need to start. People need to start thinking about that. If something happens here that's so catastrophic, can I save and put myself in a position where I can go 2 states away temporarily, where I don't have to be exposed to this because they're not making a living. They can't make a living where they are. They're living in tents. They're living on some boats that people are allowing them to live in. I mean, no, man. We as people in general, we better wake up. I'm telling you. You hear all this old woke talk. Now we better get woke for real. Because ain't nobody gonna save us. They're not coming to save you. Now, I'll
Yeah, and I
stop
want
right
to go back at this, yeah, I want to go back at this time, Sanford, and let's talk about the lone wolf attacks. Let's talk a little bit about Sarah Adams and Jane Doe and things like that. And I'm going to start off by letting people know that there's a lady, ex-CIA targeter named Sarah Adams. She came on Sean Ryan's show, I believe, toward the end of December, and she spoke on the fact that uh, radical Islamics were going to start staging lone wolf attacks in the United States. We have sleeper cells here. There's a possibility that there's Chinese, Russian, uh, Iranian, and other type of sleeper cells that are here, and that they've smuggled weapons into this country. And she clearly stated that there was going to be lone wolf terror attacks as a distraction. They would build them up to a point that the police will start to spend all their resources chasing these lone wolf attacks and trying to anticipate where they're going to be, and they won't see the major terror attacks that will occur at that point. Now, our first week of January, what did we see? We saw 2 lone wolf attacks, one in Vegas and one down in New Orleans. Now, is that a coincidence that she spoke on lone wolf attacks and then we saw a brief moment of them happening? I don't think so. I think she knows what she's talking about. And she clearly stated in her interview that ISIS and Al Qaeda has combined, which now makes them the largest terrorist organization in the world. She said that in November 2021, they devised a plan to destabilize and tear down Syria. Now Syria is a failed country, a failed state like Libya. In March 2022, the plan for Hamas to attack Israel was enacted and planned. She said it takes time to train these people and to get resources into the area. Once they get the resources there, they get the people trained and get them in the area, then they can enact their attack plans. And we got this thing that we're trying to do now called if you see something, say something. But to me, that's going to be no more effective than what Mrs. Reagan said on just say no to drugs. I mean, most people are not going to want to rat or do whatever because we've discouraged that type of activity by browbeating people that would tell on people. So to see something, say something, I think is a failed policy. You got to have actions in place and find these people and round them up. But another thing that she's saying is all these new recruits that's come out of these training camps, they don't have any fingerprints or IDs on them yet because they're brand new. She said there's 1,200 Al Qaeda operatives in the United States right now that they know of. Now, if you factor in the new recruits, they don't tell them how many's over here. And if they're going to invoke lone wolf attacks or force people to do lone wolf attacks, and then they do their coordinated attacks. And she said all this is supposed to take place in 2025. So this is a clear and present danger to everyone inside the United States. You don't know where these attacks are going to occur. You don't know what the attack methodology will be. Will it be IEDs? Will it be poisoning food? Will they be sniper attacks? Will they be car bombs? We have no idea. I mean, they could be drones carrying weaponry of some type. We have no idea of how various attacks that they're going to use. But this is a clear and present danger. I mean, how do you feel about this?
Well, do me a favor. Explain to the people who may be listening because they may not know. Tell them what the lone wolf attack is.
Okay, it's like what we saw in New Orleans. The guy he went out and tried to plant a couple of IEDs, improvised explosive devices. Then he drove his car through a crowd of people, and it was just him by himself operating by himself. And then if you can get the police to allocate their resources to trying to chase down these lone wolf guys and anticipate where they're attacked, then the police won't be grouped up to be able to take on the main attacks from the terrorist cells that are over here. And ain't no telling what they've smuggled into this country. So the lone wolf attacks will be the distraction. And then when you're looking one direction, you're going to get hit the other way by something major.
Okay, good. I wanted people to hear what it was. I don't think a lot of people know exactly, some of the things we say that we know. I just want to make sure we kind of give a baseline so they understand what we're talking about. Yeah, I think Sarah gave a great interview. And I think she told some truths that a lot of people don't want to hear. The one thing I know that's factual, and when you mentioned the lone wolf attacks, is how the intelligence has changed. So during the lone wolf attack now, not just having all the resources go to that lone wolf attack to increase it, to make sure they bring more resources as that lone wolf attack happens, you got another attack on the outside of the lone wolf attack that may be within a 5-mile radius of that, to even draw more resources in to totally suck up whatever's available to help, period. So as Jane Doe was talking and with Sean Ryan, and she was talking about, the object would not be to attack the Super Bowl. The object would be to attack the area surrounding the Super Bowl, to create enough attention to that particular area where it sucks up all the other resources the capital may be there. And they talked about how the one thing that they plan to do, that they know that they plan to do, are hit some of the smaller targeted cities, and then all of a sudden hit some of the bigger cities with this thing. But they talked about soft targets, and they talked about schools, they talked about churches, and and says it was something that was shared that was interesting. If you take a city like New Orleans, or you take a city like Chicago, and you flood the hospitals with 50 to 100 people, just on an emergency basis, it basically shuts your first responder thing all the way down. Just the intent of flooding a hospital can change the whole way your ability to have first responders available to you. It's amazing. It's amazing how we have slept on this so long, and we've let the simple things, very simple things too, very simple things get past, where we really have our backs against the wall without anything even happening yet. So yeah, the possibilities that she's speaking about, they're not possibilities because she said they're already here, and I know she's telling 100% truth because she's a targeter. This is what they do. And targeters, basically what they do, they research and they find organizations that are capable of infiltrating and attacking us in certain kind of ways, be it cyber, be it physical, be it a chemical. That's what targeters do. And when they recognize these things, they bring them forth right to the government, to the CIA, or whomever the agency is, one of the 3-letter agencies that they're working for. So this is another thing. And these are other things that are being kept not in the forefront or not up front with all the people. You know, I saw today where the big thing is the Supreme Court talking about the approval to ban TikTok. Well, ain't nobody talking about what we're talking about right now. I'm not worried about TikTok blowing up this the corner store right here. You know what I mean? I'm not worried about TikTok blowing up the mall. So I think the more we talk about this, hopefully one person hears it and turns another person on. Maybe 100 people listen to this, and we get 2 out of the 100 that say, "Let me research this," and they share it with another 20 or 30 people. But yeah, that Sarah Adams is a bad girl. What they call her? They call her, what's her nickname? Super bad or something like that, or something like super bad or something like that.
She calls herself the warlord.
Okay,
Because anybody she targets, they don't live too much longer after she targets them. That's for sure.
yeah. But I would encourage people to start researching and follow Sarah Adams to find out what she's talking about. You know, another thing we both talked about that she brought forth that I heard something about, and it was explained. She talked about it was explained in detail by Jane Doe, was the invisible bombs. So I didn't understand exactly what the invisible bomb was. And so Jane Doe brought up a big point. She said, invisible bomb typically is no bigger than the size of a liter water bottle at the most. That's like the largest size you find them on general. They typically are made to be put on a body. When they have people that put these invisible bombs on, they're typically made of products you can buy from Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart. The shrapnel made out of them is made out of hard, charred up plastic, which you know, like I know, that'll cut you just like metal. Mm-hmm. And the reason they call it invisible bomb is because a metal detector won't pick it up. And she brought up a point. She said, think about how few airports have body scanners. So the body scanner at the airport will pick it up. And she gave a number about the percentage of airports that have body scanners. And I was shocked at how small that was, especially with all the funding TSA, gets. And so, basically, man, if you want to go to an event like a presidential inauguration and you want to fly there from somewhere else, you fly from one of these small airports where they don't have a body scanner and get on a plane. You can disrupt. You can actually create and the explosions are not huge, so they don't tear buildings down. The explosions don't do that. I mean, they destroy more things in the vicinity. But if you're in a crowd of people and you're surrounded by 200-300 people, man, 50 people go vicinity. That's all it takes to destroy a whole entire mindset and cause a panic that people won't even recover from. Once the panic sets in, people do the rest. They trample each other. They create a bigger panic. If you set 3 or 4 people in a particular place and put them 40, 50 feet apart from each other, and each one of them has an invisible bomb, man, you have created a chaotic situation that nobody's prepared for. And the way our mindsets are, when you go back to what you said about first responders, how everybody goes to what's happening right then you forget about the big thing that's around you, the circumference of what's happening around you. Next thing you know, all your resources for the next 5-10 minutes are drawn to that central thing, and here comes the mother load on the outside of you. So when you talked about that, if you see something, say something. Yeah, I think we're in a society that will not embrace that, because we'll see people getting beat up on the street and take a camera out and videotape it as opposed to helping them. I posted a thing, a week or so ago where a gentleman on a train in New York went rogue and grabbed a young lady by her hair and made her stand up, and 3 or 4 men around, and they rather film it than to stop him from hurting this young lady. So I think we need to come up with ways to try to educate local populace, localized groups to get them aware that these things exist, so they know an invisible bomb exists, and it could be, man, a guy in your house next door to you could be making 15, 20 of them right now. You know, the guy at the corner store and back in the back, he he can have a whole shelf full of them. You think it's bottled water and it's bottled bombs. You know, you got any thoughts on the invisible bomb or
That whole concept scares the hell out of me because there's an unclassified book that's out. I think Sarah Adams wrote called Al Qaeda's 2.0. And it's the upcoming attack on America and Europe unveiled. And October 7th style attack on the United States and Europe. For those that don't remember, October 7th is when Hamas attacked Israel. And you're talking a similar style attack that they have planned for the United States and certain areas of Europe. And what I found interesting when I looked into that is that bin Laden's son is the leader of this whole thing from Afghanistan. I mean, he's basically on a revenge tear right now. And in the upcoming attack, it's divided into four phases. In phase one, that's going to go from 2021 to 2026. They're going to create a new Islamic Emirates, and that's going to be to select priority countries that's going to be a part of this, because every country may not be like Turkey. Turkey has a large Islamic population in it, so that Turkey might be targeted. Phase two will go from 2026 to 2030, which that's just a year down the road. That's going to be what they call Arab Spring 2.0. The most logical countries are going to be targeted at that point. Phase three will go from 2030 to 2035, and they're going to reestablish the caliphate. They're going to unite the Islamic Emirates and convince the rest of them to join up, and the ones that don't join up are going to be attacked. And then phase four, which goes from 2035 to 2040, is going to be a period of peace where they're going to prepare for global expansion. They're looking to expand their power, their region, and taking over countries. So from 2021 to 2040, they got a 4-phase plan that's in place, and it's going to go over about 2 generations of their people to make this happen. And to just know that they're going all the way out to 2040 shows how patient they are and how well planned this whole thing actually is. So people can't sit back and blow this off and say it's just fantasy, ain't going to happen. Our border's set open for so long that, like I said, we probably got Chinese cells in here, Russian, Iranian, ain't no telling how many terror cells are in here. Plus our current president, he's going to go after the cartels. And I saw recently where the cartels announced that if anybody starts coming after them, we're going to have problems. So you're going to have cells or cartels over here doing car bombs and doing different things. So you might as well buckle up because the pain is coming. Terrorism will come to this country, and we'll probably be seeing it in 2025. And I'll stop there.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think the one of the things that we need to spread, how we talked about preparedness when it comes to the weather, preparedness when it comes to some of the disasters, placed upon the land. I think the preparedness of getting ready for what you're talking about, we need to put that in the forefront also. And one of the things that Jane Doe talked about, and I thought was interesting, she said one of the things that's always prolonged certain kind of attacks is that we are a very armed nation and compared to other nations. And she was doing a comparison to her United States and Europe. And she said that, socially people talk about they like what Europe is, but from being a safe haven, Europe is so unsafe. It's worse than we are with all the borders wide open. And I think that's really something that people need to look at this around the world. And she talked about the fact that we are armed helps deter them just running rickshaw just right over everything just instantly. So that's why it's a planned strategy, like you said, and it's made to cherry pick and pick certain parts of the nation out. And she even mentioned that with certain states, she said unfortunately for the United States, some of the biggest states with the most money, the most finances, are the states where people aren't armed. So she mentioned like California and New York. So she mentioned how New York, that's where Wall Street is. This is our money central, supposedly. And that's one of the places that's the loosest when it comes to just everyday people being able and being in a position to counter some of these things that may happen. I think that we need to get real with ourselves, and we need to realize that we need to prepare and be prepared in a way that you may not feel comfortable with, because it's not if something's going to happen, it's when something's going to happen. And what you don't know, and what we and people talk about your stereotypes and stuff, but you have stereotypes for a reason. Things happen enough, and that's how stereotypes get created. So in some of your neighborhoods, and you need to look at your communities, and look how your communities are based and how they put together in some of your neighborhoods, and you have to get the mindset that we have to be able to sustain against some of this newness. And that's not saying that people who come here, who have come across the border, that everybody's a bad person. I don't believe that at all. But the fact that they didn't come a certain way gives me the idea that it may be more risky than not. And we have to be honest with ourselves about that possibility. And everybody coming into this country is not coming to this country because they love this country. They're not coming here for the opportunity to be better. They're coming here for the opportunity to do some bad too. And I think just the everyday citizen needs to pay attention. And there's nothing wrong, man, with the willingness, having the willingness to protect yourself and your family and your surroundings, what you work for, and what the people around you have worked for, and for whatever you believe in. There's nothing wrong with that. So I would encourage people to get educated, get trained. There's a book by a gentleman named Robert Greene. Okay, and I don't know how many years ago this book came out, but it's called The 33 Strategies of War. And I'm telling you, it's a good read, but as an audio book, man, if you're riding around in your car, you want to download it, someplace you can download it for free, ride around and listen to it. And when you listen to it, I think the book was written like in the early 2000s. When you listen to that book is right now. And it's about 20 years old. So I would encourage people to get that, the 33 Strategies of War by Robert Greene, and check it out. And just look up the strategies and see what comes up, and see if it's 3, 4, 5 things that make you say, I better pay attention to this. Because the only thing that's going to save us is if we start informing the smaller communities of what's possible and what can happen. Yeah, there we go. Right. What can happen and the possibilities. We start informing the schools and making the schools truly aware that some of these things that we're talking about are possible. And I don't want to create a fear, but I want to create let me say this. I don't want to create a fear that causes panic, but I want to create a healthy fear. And I think we the people who know, we need to start spreading it and exposing the people who don't know, and not trying to convince them, just expose them to it. If we can do our part by exposing them to certain things and give them an opportunity to look it up and research for themselves, maybe that'll help, because that's what we're going to need. Because when we have these lone wolf attacks, it's going to be too many of them for the local law enforcement and regional law enforcement to handle it. We're going to have to learn how to
Um,
handle some of these things ourselves. We're going to have to learn how to do that. Now, we have to learn how to do it within the laws, but when they start breaking the laws, and if it comes to a point like you get a guy like in New Orleans that's taking lives, I mean, you have to do what's necessary to win and survive. There you go. I'm telling you. And people need to look at that and pay attention to that. If nothing else, I'm not saying buy into all of it. I'm saying read it, look at it, just look at the strategies, and see if you see 4 or 5 that make sense that are relative to what you might have in your environment and what you are seeing on a daily basis. I'll stop right there.
okay. And I'm going to add to what you said on the amount of people that came into this country. Now, when we reached the 10 million mark, I sat down and I just did some math. And I'm like, at 10 million, if only 5% are bad, what is that number? And out of 10 million, 5% of them being bad, deaf to America type people, that was 500,000. That's what we used to invade Iraq in Desert Storm 2, was 500,000 soldiers. You done let 500,000 potential people into this country that didn't have to fight to get across the borders. They walked right on in. And you opened it up, you set up sanctuary cities for them and everything, and you gave them priority status where they get debit cards with $5,000 to $8,000 on them. You're literally funding them. And 500,000, man, that's an invasion force. And they walk right in here, and they got priority status, and it amazes me. And then we, the people, have to deal with this, and that's brings up another thing I'm about to say. You heard what I said about the failure of responsibility in California. I'm gonna say to each and every person watching this, it's your responsibility to sit down and have a talk with your family, map out a plan of action, put certain things in place, and do whatever you got to do to have some disaster kits on hand. Be prepared to shelter in place in your home, have your home stocked up with food, water, have the ability to defend, have generators, other things on hands that would make your life easier. Because our power grid is antiquated, it's outdated, it goes down at the least little bit of weather. It would not take much for them to bring it down. You have 9 main plants. And if you want to extend it out, you could say 18. If those substations were attacked, the grid would be down across the entire United States, period. And without power, we would implode on ourselves and start attacking each other over resources. So take responsibility now. Get out in front of this. Get things into place that maybe you can make it through till order gets reestablished. Because again, responsibility, you don't take a day off, and responsibility doesn't take vacation. Now, we're not saying you can't go out and live your best life. But if you can live with the worst and you can deal with the worst, the good takes care of itself. You never have to worry about the good.
Right.
So I'm going to stop there. And if you have a closing statement you want to make for the show, Stanford, it's up to you.
Well, what I want to say, we always talk about be ready so you don't have to get ready. I want to say this. People tell me that, or they say to me sometimes, man, I'll go out here and buy all this stuff. I didn't even need it. Well, I can't have too much of what's necessary. You know what I mean? I'd rather have an abundance of food than not to have enough. I'd rather have an abundance of resources to heat my home than not to have enough. I'd rather have an abundance of resources to protect myself physically and my family and my friends and my surroundings than not to have enough. You know, People will say, well, man, they say, well, you carry a gun everywhere you go. Well, I mean, I'd rather have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. So
Mhm.
I would like people to take that mindset toward preparing themselves for every kind of situation. When it was bitterly cold the last few days. I mean, it was cold, man, this last week, and I hate cold weather. But I had something happen where I had to go into my bag and get an extra pair of pants that I kept in my bag with my foot warmers and my hand warmers. That happened last week. And I thought to myself, I laughed out loud, and I thought to myself, I said, that's right, man. You live exactly what you telling people to do. Lead by example. So do the things that the things that we take for granted. Supply yourself with the things you take for granted sometimes, because there's a reason you take them for granted, but there's also a reason that you have them. So nothing hurts to put an extra pair of pants in your car, a sweatshirt in your car. I just gave my wife a different kind of flashlight with a window breaker on it to keep. She has a flashlight in her emergency bag, but to put right up in the inside door panel in case something happens, or she can break that windshield if she needs to. It's a flashlight that she has in hand. Think about things you need to have in hand. One thing I want to push forward too, just for some protection stuff in your car. Go out and buy some bear spray. Yeah, especially all the ladies out here. Go out and buy yourself a can of bear spray and just keep it where it's within arm's length in the car. Because things are still happening. I'll say this, and this will be the last thing I'll talk about, but I had a good friend of mine contact me this morning, and his niece, it's happened in Columbus, Ohio. This is horrible. It happened this morning. She was catching the bus to go to work, and his niece was sexually assaulted by a guy who pulled up, went right past the bus stop, got out the car, and pulled a gun on her and sexually assaulted her this morning, right near a bus stop. And she was left in a position where he told her, if you don't carry out these acts, I'm going to take your life. And I'm saying it's probably nothing she could have done about it. But the sense of awareness, when he got out the car and started walking toward her, if she'd had any kind of tool maybe to deter him before he got there. Now, if he pulled a gun on her, and she couldn't do anything, there some things you can't help. But I'm saying that to say, I want people to pay attention to their surroundings. Don't get. I'm telling you, the easiest things can happen to you. A good friend of mine that you and I both know, Aaron. She told me she was going into her garage. This is 3 days ago, and she got out of her car. She got out of the car in the garage connected to the house, and she said before she got to the door, there was 2 giant dogs entering her garage. And she was frozen right there because she felt like she couldn't make it back to the car and she didn't know if she could make it in the house. So the dogs appear to be well groomed, but they still were there. Big dogs. And we know dogs will attack you in a pack, in groups. 2 or more, they will attack you. And she thought about to herself, she takes some firearms classes from me right now. She thought to herself, could she use that firearm to defend herself against these dogs? And the answer was yes, but the firearm on hand. So if we don't do anything else, and this goes back to everything, we talk about being prepared. Let's try not to take so many things for granted. Let's try not to do that as people. And I'm not saying live a super paranoid life, but let's just remember the possibilities of things happening are there. So, and I explained to her, I said, when you leave your car and you go to your house, you should carry that mace anyway, because you go in the house, somebody may be in the house. You don't want to leave it in the car. It doesn't hurt you anymore to take it back to the car when you go to the car. So that's something simple, and that doesn't make you paranoid. That makes you prepared. So, and we don't do anything else as a society. Really pay attention to the things that are happening around you, the disasters that are happening, the attacks that are happening. And I'm talking about localized attacks from people robbing people and breaking into the houses or stealing the car. And ask yourself, am I prepared just to even deal with those things? And I'll stop right there.
Yeah, I'm just going to finish up by saying one last thing. People need to understand that in preparedness, any disaster that's happening, bad things do happen to good people. It happens all the time. And you have to be able to survive until help arrives. Even in natural disasters, it takes a certain amount of time before you're going to see FEMA. That could be a week or two, and you got to make it until they show up. And that's if they show up at all. I mean, you may not even see them. So you have to be able to hold on. You have to have a certain amount of stuff in place or have somewhere where you can go. And the sooner you get started, the quicker you're going to be in a state of preparedness. But get started. That's the most important thing. And I'll stop there.
All right. Well, we hope everybody enjoyed the show tonight. A little different, current events and some things that's happening internationally. We hope you continue to watch and support the Refuge Depot. Support our Patreon. Check us out on YouTube and all the other outlets. We on every social media outlet there is. Look up Brother Steve Muhammad. You'll find him and you'll find us. And we'll catch you next time.